Okay, we're going to go through what fellowship is. All of those, to most of us, boring offerings in the Old Testament were about fellowship with God. And here's something that David said about it. And we know David was saved because Christ comes from David. Okay, so this is a post-salvation issue. How blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity. When I kept silent about my sin, my body wasted away. Then I acknowledged my sin. I said, I will confess, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Now, you are saved, but you still have consequences to sin. There is punishment due to sin that's in time, because it's a fellowship issue. It's also something that occurs in time issue that has effects on the world. It has nothing to do with salvation. Okay? It's a justice issue. So when you sin, it's just like, if you hit somebody's car. All right? You don't stop being a citizen of the United States assuming you're a U.S. citizen. You're a U.S. citizen, you hit somebody's car. You don't stop being a citizen of the United States because you hit somebody's car. And you don't stop being saved because you sin. But something else is due. It's a juridical issue still. And that's what David is talking about here. How blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity. When I kept silent, my body wasted away. In other words, if you're in a state of sin, you're going to get sick sooner or later. You can get sick because of spiritual advance, and you can get sick because you're not naming your sin to God. Both of them happen. A lot of Old Testament stuff on that. So one of the bad things that happens to you in time, if you do not admit your sin to God, is you get sick. And that happened to David. In fact, the story of that is at the beginning of 1 Kings. David was sick because he wasn't doing what God wanted him to do. God wanted him to name Solomon, and he was putting it off. Okay, he didn't want to give his crown up. And that's an instance of when his body was groaning. This particular instance was the sin of with Bathsheba. So this was a different instance. Okay, so then he admitted the sin, and he confessed it, and God forgave it. All right, and he also had a punishment, as you might remember at the end of 2 Samuel. All right, so that's a separate issue. That's a fellowship issue. All right, you see that? All right, we're going to go to another passage in Psalms that's related. And it's right here. Psalm 66, 18 through 20. If I regard wickedness in my heart, that means I have an unconfessed sin, the Lord will not hear my prayer. A lot of people say they lose their faith because God won't hear their prayer. Right? Well, God won't hear your prayer if you're carnal. And James talks about that in James 3. See? Tongue is a fire. All right? And then you have James 4. Especially it's James 4. All right? Quarrels and conflicts. Well, obviously that's sin. Okay? You lust and you don't have. You commit murder. You're envious. Okay? You do not have because you do not ask. You are envious and cannot obtain what you want in your prayers. You ask in prayer but do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives. See, all these are states of sin. All right? And that takes us back to Psalm 66, 18. You see that? James 4 and 3 were on wickedness. in your heart. You're sinning. You're in a state of sin. God will not hear your prayer. You're going to get sick, and God will not hear your prayer if you don't use 1 John 1:9. The equivalent of 1 John 1:9 is Psalm 66 and 32. Now, Christ hadn't come yet. So, to depict his future coming, they not only had to name their sins, but they had to take an animal to the priest. All right? And here is the source of that in Leviticus 16. Now, you, like Aaron, are a priest. You're not in the same kind of priesthood because we, church, have a different covenant. Okay, but the idea is the same. Look at this. Tell your brother Aaron, now he's the high priest, okay? He shall not enter at any time into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat which is on the ark, or he will die. In other words, you can't get close to God or you'll die. Because I'm going to be there, God. I'm going to put my presence there. So guess what? You can't be in the same place I am because you're not holy like me. So in order to get into the holy place, what does he have to do? He has to sacrifice an animal. All right? And this is all the procedure about how he, puts it on. Okay? And then on top of that, he's got 2 goats. Why 2? Because one of the goats is going to be alive. It's really important. Alive. Some sacrifice has got to stay alive. All right? It's alive to make atonement. See? The aliveness makes the atonement. So what does the book of Hebrews tell us about that? See, there's a whole lot about this doctrine in the New Testament that nobody's reading. And that's why I'm going through it. Now see, that's what we were just first reading. See, Leviticus 16, the first covenant, had regulations of worship in earthly sanctuary. See the top of the screen. Lord said to Moses, tell your brother Aaron. See? So he's talking back to Leviticus 16. Okay, here's the tabernacle. That's what he's talking about, the outer one. And then there's the Holy of Holies. See the 2 windows? See the 2 lines of blue? The two sections of blue, first in Leviticus 16, then in Hebrews 9. So he's trying to explain. The priests are constantly getting into worship, but they have to sacrifice something. The second, the high priest only enters once a year. All right? But now what? But when Christ appeared, he entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle. All right? So if the blood of goats and bulls, which we're looking at in the top window, how much more the blood of Christ? But you notice something? Christ is living like the scapegoat. See? Where is it? The scapegoat. He was the scapegoat for our sins. And that scapegoat had to be presented alive. And then it was sent into what? The wilderness. It wasn't killed. All right? So Christ has to both die and be alive.